guys, I'm Prodigy from Airsoft Team Kilo23. Today we're going to be taking another look at one of Crazyncman's guns that he's sending around the US on his nationwide review project, the JG SIG 552. But instead of being a whole gun that I'm going to review, this is going to be an assembly video because this gun's in pieces, so let's put it together. Now, Crazyncman sent this gun to me in pieces on purpose so that I could put this together for him, get it working right, get a video out too, and get it sent around the US so they can get this started. So SIGs are usually pretty complex guns, some of the harder airsoft guns in my opinion to work on. So this video is gonna kind of help you guys to work around those problems and get your gun back together if you need help like that. So this box here, it's full of parts, got a lot to go over. Let's get started. So because this gun's already in pieces, let's go ahead and check out the gearbox and see what's going on inside this gun. Looks like we've got 6mm nylon bushings, so those are probably something to upgrade if you buy this gun. Personally, that'd be the first thing I'd upgrade. I'm not a fan of plastic bushings at all. The piston and spring are attached via the piston head lug in there, the whole one chunk of metal that keeps it all together. It does have 5 ports. O-ring feels pretty good. There's like no grease on the piston whatsoever, which is not great. So, got your standard plastic version 3 spring guide. The gears look like they have a load of brown Chinese gunk grease on there, so if you guys end up getting this gun, I really recommend taking this apart, getting some new bushings for it, re-greasing it, re-shimming it, get these gears working the way they should be. The tappet plate feels alright, something special about it, should last you for a long time. The nozzle, no internal O-ring, and it wobbles a little bit. There's nothing a little bit of grease won't take care of. And the cylinder head has 1 O-ring and fits pretty snugly inside the cylinder, so that's a good thing. The gears also have an installed selector chip, so that's kind of a nice touch, really helps. Now with the gearbox reassembled, we can go ahead and start putting the entire gun back together. But before we do that, I did notice that the red wire here had come off probably during shipping, so I went ahead and resoldered that back on. Alright, let's start with the right side of the gearbox. We have a handful of mechanical items that will go up on the outside of the gearbox and a couple of plastic ones that'll help to orient them. So that way we can actually use our selector switch and select safe, semi, or full auto in the gun. First off, we can install this little bar here. It goes just right there. Make sure the longer bar is sticking out. Next up, we can take this little plastic thing here, and before you actually install it, you do want to make sure your black and red wires both are running under the little lip of it here, so that holds them both in place. Now your wires might slip out of here, so don't worry about it. They're pretty easy to reorient. So next up, you can take this long mechanical rod here and put it right in there. Now we can flip it over to the other side. Take the other side of that little mechanical piece and the screw that goes with it, and install those, and tighten the screw. Now while we're on this side, we can go ahead and finish everything off here. Take this little plastic doohickey here, stick it right there. There's a little hole where one side goes in, so it shouldn't be that much of a problem. Now aligning the selector and all this good stuff can be a bit of a pain, but once you actually understand it all, it's pretty easy. I like to move my selector plate all the way to the left here, and there's a little notch at the top of this gear here, right here, that will align with that. The small circular section in here will align with the small disc we just placed here, so we can align all this. Might take a little bit. There we go. Make sure it moves as smoothly as possible and from one end to the other. Now when we flip this over, I'm going to leave it at the far end here so that we can properly align the gear on the other side, which is this guy. So you want to have about the same idea going here. Try to have it at the end of the tooth rack here on the gear, so that when you actually select safe, semi, or full auto, you're not going to have a problem. For this next step, you're going to need your lower receiver. Basically, you're just putting the gearbox into the lower receiver. Make sure none of the wires are crimped while you're doing this. Now, after working with this thing a little bit, you should be able to get it to fit just fine. This is probably the hardest part of actually getting the gun together. You just need to make sure these wires are not in the way here, and that the wiring underneath the gearbox doesn't get in the way at all. Just make sure you're not crimping any wires or doing damage to anything. It is pretty easy to do, so just watch yourself, make sure you do it correctly. Next up, we can install little plastic pieces underneath the selector switches. So once you have these aligned with the half circle discs underneath, you can just screw them in. And now the other side. Now the other side is going to have a little selector notch here. This is a small spring and metal piece that will fit inside the small plastic piece, so make sure you have these installed correctly as well. After you have those installed, you can take your selector switch and the small Allen key, go ahead and tighten it into place on both sides. Now you want to make sure everything clicks into place, so go ahead and test it. And everything works just fine, clicks into place, works really well. So now we can move on. Now I just reached in my bag of parts and I found these two screws. You're going to need these to install the stock next. Now oddly enough, we're not going to install the pistol grip next because the stock has a small notch we need on it to install the pistol grip next. So these two screws are what you want to start with here. The stock is pretty easy to install. Just slide it in. These screws, they are different, but they go on either side. There's nothing too different about them as far as functionality, they just look a little different. Screw it in there. Flip it over. And install your other one. Next, you can install your pistol grip. That's this guy. You want to feed the wires through the hole in the front in here. So now you can go ahead and place your pistol grip on here, and your wires are fed through the large hole in the front. Now we can go ahead and find the two screws that hold the pistol grip on and install those. So these two screws are what you're looking for. They're sort of short, flat-headed guys. They do take a Phillips head, so make sure you got the right ones. So I like to use a magnetic head screwdriver when I'm doing this so I don't lose these. Go ahead and insert your screwdriver and install your screws. Next, we can install the motor. Make sure you have your spring right here. Make sure you know which end is which. The red is always positive, so that will go with the red wire, always. Do not reverse it, or you could potentially damage parts in your gearbox. Now you want to go ahead and insert the motor in here. Let's do it whichever way looks best as far as wire orientation. Now with your motor pins installed, you can go ahead and take your little adjustment plate here and install the motor plate here on the end of the pistol grip. Now you can find these two screws next. One's long, one's short, and they're both Phillips heads. Kind of give you an idea what you're looking for right there. These will go into the motor plate and pistol grip right here. The smaller screw goes in the front, and the longer screw goes in the back. Now, I think the hardest part of this next step here is keeping these wires out of the way. Sometimes they tend to get in the way and it gets to be a pain. So what I like to do next, it is a little optional, but I am going to install the barrel. Now to do that, you're going to need this plate here and one other screw. So the screw you're looking for is this little guy right here. It's similar to the one that goes into the pistol grip, but a little different. It's slightly larger in the shaft. So I'm going to take this plate here, make sure you have this side facing up, So this side is down, it can lock onto the magazine properly. Make sure the 2 pegs here lock in where they're supposed to, right there. Now I'm going to insert the barrel here and press that upward so it latches in with the bottom of the hop-up. Now you can insert that screw right in here just in front of the hop-up loading nozzle. Now, once again, the wiring here is probably going to be the most annoying aspect of getting the rest of this gun together. So now you're going to need the entire upper receiver here. Now, annoyingly enough, this is a newer JG SIG, so it has a metal flash hider. My teammate Camo bought a JG SIG a while ago for some replacement parts for his Tokyo Marui SIG, and it had a plastic flash hider. Both are glued on, but metal would just be so much nicer to have over plastic. But oh well. Let's go ahead and install this. Now, once you get the upper and lower receivers more or less joined together a little bit, you'll notice that the wiring has to go through these little slots here. So I found the easiest way to actually get them to work properly and do this is to remove the 2 screws right here on either side. Now, getting everything situated is probably the hard part of all of this, but once you have all these wires successfully put in here and they're not going anywhere, you can go ahead and install these 4 screws, tighten them really good, and you're good to go. Next up, you want to fold the stock and locate this long Phillips screw. It will go in the back right here, and it will keep your upper receiver in place pretty nicely. Tighten that. And you should notice your upper receiver tighten into the stock piece a little bit. Now, since the fuse on this thing was already disassembled, I will go ahead and reassemble this. Let's put your fuse in there, find your fuse case right there, and press it all together. Finally, we can assemble the handguard. Now, all these rails came disassembled for me, so I had to assemble them. It's a pretty straightforward process, so if you have to do that, it's not that hard. Go ahead and install the lower piece of the rail first. Now pop your piece in top here, push your lower forward, and pop the pin in. Finally, you can install the rail on top here. It's pretty straightforward. All you have to do is make sure this notch in the front of the RIS corresponds with the notches here, and tighten the screw. So with this gun fully assembled, let's go ahead and chrono this thing. I'll be using .25 gram rounds instead of .2s, mainly because everyone uses 2.5s when they play usually, just for better accuracy and just improved performance overall. That's personally what I use, so that's just my preference. Let's go to it. Alright, so it looks like it's shooting between about 300 to 330. We had one that was shooting up at 360, so that was a little odd. It's probably just my chrono. But I will be replacing my chrono soon, so that'll be nice. So generally about 300 to 330 with 2.5s, so you can look at about a 30 to 40 FPS increase with 2s with a setup like this. Now, I'm a personal fan of SIGs myself. I love the SIG 551 and 552. Some of my favorite airsoft guns out there, no matter what company makes them. TM, JG, ICS, all great. So if you want to purchase this gun, you can go to milspecairsoft.com. Got a great deal for it there, and you're getting one straight from Crazyncman himself. You couldn't ask for a lot more right there. You can also check this gun out as others review it, skirmish with it, and play with it at skirmishreport.com. Should be a lot of fun. I'm Prodigy from Airsoft Team Kilo23, signing off.